I taught my son how to tie his shoes. Last night, those same hands pushed me to the floor. I thought I was only losing money, but I almost lost my life. I spent the entire night in my old sedan in a supermarket parking lot, clutching a folder of documents. At dawn, the first thing I saw was the flash of police lights arriving at my son's door. My name is Marjorie Hale. I am 58 years old, and for the last 4 years, I have been a widow. I live just outside Port Townsend, in a small house that my late husband, David, and I bought decades ago. It's quiet here. My life is measured by the tides and the blooming cycles of my lavender garden. The scent of it clings to my clothes when I go to my part-time job as a librarian at the Harbour Light Community Centre. It's a predictable life, and I've found a fragile peace in that predictability. That peace shattered on a Tuesday. My son, Caleb, who is 32, and his wife, Sienna, had planned a dinner for that night. It was supposed to celebrate a big promotion Caleb had apparently received. I had ironed my best blouse. Then, around noon, the call came. "Mom." "Hey." Caleb's voice was rushed, tinny over the speaker. "Listen, we have to postpone dinner. Something came up with the client. A real emergency. Sienna's stressed. Let's skip tonight. Don't come over." I felt the familiar prick of disappointment, but I smoothed it over. As mothers do. "Oh, of course. Honey, is everything all right? We can do it this weekend?" Yeah. Fine. Just not tonight. Gotta go." The line clicked dead before I could say I love you. The evening felt long and empty. The silence in the house was louder than usual. I decided to drive into town, perhaps pick up some groceries I didn't need, just to see other human faces. The fog was rolling in off the water, blurring the edges of the Victorian buildings on Water Street. That's when I passed the Gull's Lantern. It's one of the most expensive restaurants in town, the kind of place with white tablecloths and cocktails that cost $20 apiece. I was only glancing, a habit from years of looking for familiar cars, when I saw him. Caleb? He was at a large table by the window, clearly visible. He wasn't in a panic. He was laughing, his head thrown back, and beside him, Sienna, looking radiant in a silk dress I didn't recognize. They were surrounded by at least 8 of their friends, all raising champagne flutes in a toast. The promotion dinner was happening, just not with me. A cold numbness started in my chest and spread to my fingers. I pulled the car over to the curb across the street, my heart hammering a sick, hollow beat, as if summoned by the betrayal. My phone buzzed in the cup holder, a notification from my bank. I tapped it open, my hands clumsy. A new charge was processing. The Gull's Lantern. $478. I walked across the street, pretending to look at the artisan jewelry in the window next door. The bank's main windows were frosted, designed for privacy. But from the angle by the doorway, through a sliver of clear glass near the etched logo, I could see the private banking lounge. I saw Sloane, sitting back in a plush leather chair, smiling at a man in a sharp suit. I saw Evan, leaning forward. The man pushed a thick stack of documents across the polished wooden table. Evan picked up a pen. He signed. Then, he reached into his wallet. He pulled out a debit card. I recognized the color. It was the card for the joint account, the one I'd added him to years ago. Just in case. "Mum," he'd said, "if you ever have an emergency, if you fall, I need to be able to pay for things." An emergency. He handed the card to the advisor. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I almost ignored it. My eyes locked on my son. But the vibration was insistent. I pulled it out. A text alert. I requested a new card for myself and cancelled the supplementary one entirely. The action was immediate and final. As the confirmation screen glowed, I looked up. Our eyes met through the glass. Sienna had been watching me. There was no flicker of surprise, no guilt, just a flat, cold look of contempt, as if I were something she had stepped in. She knew I was there. She didn't care. I watched her turn back to the table. I saw Caleb start to rise, confusion and a flicker of panic on his face as he, too, saw my car. But Sienna, without even looking at him, placed a perfectly manicured hand on his forearm and applied gentle, firm pressure. He sank back into his chair, a puppet whose strings had been tugged. He didn't get up again. I put the car in drive. I didn't honk. I didn't cry. I just drove home, the fog closing in behind me. But a new, cold thought had settled in my mind. This wasn't a simple, hurtful lie about a dinner party. This was practiced. It was cold. If they could do this so brazenly, what else were they doing? If this was what they did in plain sight, what was happening in the shadows? I didn't sleep. The clock on the microwave chimed 3 a.m., then 4. I sat at my kitchen table, the smooth oak cool beneath my forearms, and waited for the grey, watery light of a Port Townsend dawn. The humiliation from the restaurant had hardened overnight, cooling from searing anger into a dense, cold resolve. My son wasn't just careless, he was cruel. And Sienna was something else entirely. I turned on the printer. The whir and click of the aging machine was the only sound in the house, spitting out page after page. I went back 9 months. Not just the credit card, but the checking account, the savings, the home equity line I hadn't touched in years. I spread the statements across the table, the paper covering the wood grain, a mosaic of my own foolishness. It started exactly as I suspected. The charges on the supplementary card were a cascade of luxury I couldn't fathom. Napa Valley Wine Club, $300 a month. Aspen Getaway, $2,000. Dozens of charges at upscale bars and restaurants I had never heard of. A recurring monthly fee for a co-work collective in Seattle. Caleb didn't co-work. He worked from their spare bedroom, or at least, that's what he'd told me. The true rot, however, wasn't on the credit card. It was in the checking account. I logged into the full banking portal, a place I rarely visited. I clicked through the transfer history, and I found it. A digital linkage I had not authorized. 6 months ago. Caleb had tied my primary savings account the money David had left me, my only cushion to a private e-wallet in his name. He was siphoning, not large, obvious amounts, but a steady drain. 500 here, 1,000 there. My breath hitched. I felt a sudden, dizzying chill. I remembered the old iPad he'd left in my guest room years ago, after complaining it was too slow. I had kept it charged, using it to look up recipes. I fetched it from the counter. His email and cloud accounts were still logged in. I opened his draft folder. One message, unsent, was addressed to his insurance agent. The subject line was, "Query on primary residence." I read the draft, hypothetically, if my mother's house was transferred to my name. Could I add it to my existing portfolio? Need to know the valuation requirements for a premium insurance package. Premium home insurance. My stomach twisted. I backed out of the email and his text messages loaded. My eyes snagged on a group chat. The name was simply The Board. It was Sienna and two other people I didn't recognize. I scrolled back, my thumb moving robotically. I found a message from Sienna, sent just last week. He's being sentimental about the house, but the refi is almost approved. Once the property is reassessed, we are golden. Just need him to handle his mother. My head was spinning. Refi reassessment. I ran to the hall closet, to the small fireproof box where I kept my most important documents. I fumbled with the key, my hands shaking so badly it took 3 tries. I pulled out the file for the house. My house, paid off for a decade, tucked inside the original deed, not in my meticulous order, was a fresh packet of documents. North Coast Lending. It was a short-term loan for $50,000, taken out 6 weeks ago. The collateral listed was my address, and at the bottom of the signature page, a forgery of my name. I nearly collapsed. A memory flashed Sienna, stopping by unannounced about a month ago, saying she was just dropping off some mail that got sent to their place. I lunged for my phone, pulling up the doorbell camera app. I scrolled back. 6 weeks ago, 10 a.m. There was Sienna, walking up to my porch, smiling at the camera. But she wasn't dropping mail off. The clip showed her taking something from my mailbox, a thick, priority envelope, the kind lenders use. She had been intercepting the correspondence. I needed to breathe. I needed someone not in this house. I called Gwen, my neighbor. Gwen is 65, sharp as a tack, and spent 30 years as a superior court clerk. She answered on the second ring, her voice already alert. Marjorie, it's not even 6. Gwen, I think Caleb is stealing from me. I think they're trying to take my house. The words sounded insane as I said them. There was a pause, not of disbelief, but of calculation. Marjorie, listen to me, she said, her voice dropping into a calm, professional tone. Are you safe right now? Is he there? No, I'm alone. Good. Do not call him. Do not text Sienna. Do not change your expression if you see them. You are a ghost. You know nothing. You are going to document. Get a notebook. Write down every charge, every date. Screenshot those text messages. Print those emails. Save the camera footage. We are building a case. Do not, under any circumstances, confront them yet. Am I clear? Yes, I whispered. Go to the store now. Buy a new spiral notebook. Start writing. The line clicked. I deleted the call from my log. I drove to the drugstore. The streets empty in the pre-dawn quiet. I bought a simple black notebook and a pack of pens. I came back to the kitchen table, pushed the bank statements aside, and opened to the first clean page. I wrote today's date. Then I began to list. My handwriting steady and clear, the Gull's Lantern, $478. The investigation had begun. I didn't have to wait long. The sun was just beginning to dip, painting the sky over the harbour in shades of apricot and lavender, when Caleb's car screeched into my driveway. I had been sitting at the kitchen table, the black notebook tucked away, a single cup of tea growing cold in my hands. My phone was in my apron pocket. The voice recorder app was open. The knock wasn't a knock. It was a heavy-handed slam. I opened the door. He brushed past me, his face a mask of righteous indignation. He was wearing the expensive jacket I recognized from the bank statements. You cancelled the card, he said, not as a question, but an accusation. He was pacing my kitchen, too much energy for the small space. Right in the middle of the dinner, the single most important dinner of my career. Mom, Sienna's contacts, my potential partners. You made me look like a child, like I couldn't pay a bill. You were using my name, I said, my voice much steadier than I felt. It's a supplementary card. It's what it's for. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and a strange shift happened. The anger didn't fade, but it suddenly seemed managed, as if he were taking direction. He accepted a FaceTime call. Sienna's face appeared, perfectly framed, her lighting immaculate. She looked concerned, her brow furrowed in that way she had, which looked like empathy, but was just concentration. Oh, thank God. Caleb. You found her, Sienna said, her voice smooth and syrupy. Marjorie, are you all right? We were so worried when you didn't answer our calls, and then what you did at the restaurant. Honestly, it was so frightening. That kind of instability. You nearly cost Caleb the entire contract. Instability. The word hung in the air, a calculated, poisonous dart. They were building a narrative. The senile, confused old mother. I took a breath. I reached into my pocket, my thumb finding the small red circle on the screen of my phone. I pressed it. The recorder was active. I am perfectly stable. Sienna? I said. I walked to the pile of papers I had printed that morning, the ones Gwen had told me to keep safe. I pulled one sheet from the stack and slid it across the kitchen table to Caleb. This, however, is not. Caleb looked down. He paled. It was the application for the $50,000 loan from North Coast Lending. What is this? He stammered, his earlier confidence evaporating. I don't know what this is. It's a loan. Caleb, taken out against my house, with a very good forgery of my signature at the bottom. I was wondering whose it was. Sienna's voice sharpened from the phone. Caleb, hold the phone up. Let me see it. He angled the screen toward the document. Sienna went quiet for a long moment, reading. When she spoke again, the fake sweetness was gone, replaced by a metallic irritation. Marjorie, stop being dramatic. It's the refi. We told you about it. You never told me about a loan. Sienna, you certainly never told me I had signed for one. It was probably an electronic authorization, she said, dismissively, with a wave of her hand. You must have clicked on something we sent. You know you're not great with the computer. We were just organizing your assets. My assets? It doesn't matter. Caleb finally exploded, finding his voice. He slammed his hand on the table, making the teacup jump. It's just paperwork. Why are you doing this? You're old. You have all this value, just sitting here, doing nothing. I'm trying to build a life. It's all going to be mine anyway. Mom, what difference does it make if I use some of it now? A cold silence filled the room. He had said it, the quiet part, loud. Sienna's eyes widened on the screen. Caleb, shut up, she hissed. He flinched, realizing what he'd admitted. Sienna tried to recover, her voice taking on a frantic, placating tone. He's just stressed. Marjorie, you're stressing him out. We are trying to protect the estate. We're trying to make sure you're taken care of. This is just proactive planning. She was talking too fast, her eyes darting. Honestly, none of this would even be an issue. It would all be so much simpler if the insurance just paid out. Then everything would be settled, neat and tidy. If the insurance just paid out. My blood ran cold. The recorded file on my phone suddenly felt 10 pounds heavier. This wasn't about a dinner party. This wasn't about a credit card. Or even the loan. They weren't just planning to steal from me. They were planning for my absence. I called Gwen back as soon as they hung up. My voice was hollow. He said it. Sienna, too. They talked about the insurance payout, as if I were already gone. Gwen's response was immediate. All business. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. You are going to the offices of Whitcomb and Tiller. You will ask for Nora Whitcomb. She's about 45, and she is the sharpest family law and probate attorney in this county. She doesn't just know the law, she knows how these people think. Go home, lock your doors, and do not answer the phone. The next morning, Nora Whitcomb's office was all glass, light, and quiet competence. Nora herself was dressed in a crisp grey suit, her dark hair pulled back. She didn't waste time on sympathies. She motioned me to a chair, and I watched her review the bank statements, the loan document, and the timeline I had written in my notebook. Finally, I slid my phone across the desk. This is from last night. I recorded it. I played the file. Nora listened intently, her face neutral, but her fingers tapped a fast, silent rhythm on her desk when Caleb yelled, "It's all going to be mine anyway." When Sienna's voice came through, mentioning the insurance. Nora's eyes narrowed. She let the silence sit for a moment after the recording ended. "Mrs. Hale," she said, her voice precise. "What I am looking at are clear markers for accelerated inheritance. They are not just stealing from you. They are trying to liquidate you. This is signature forgery, which is a felony. This is financial coercion. This is, by every legal definition, elder abuse." The word abuse landed on me with the weight of a physical object. Nora, however, was already moving. She was less like a lawyer and more like an ER surgeon preparing for a trauma. "We are building a firewall," she said, picking up her phone. "Starting right now." For the next 2 hours, she systematically cut them out of my life. First, she initiated a 3-way call with my bank's fraud department. "I am Nora Whitcomb, counsel for Marjorie Hale," she said, her voice leaving no room for argument. "We are freezing all external access to her accounts. I want the e-wallet link ending in 530, associated with Caleb Hale, severed immediately." She waited, her eyes on me. "It is done." While still on that call, she had me log into my accounts on her computer. She guided me through changing every password bank, email, even the library system. She made me enable 2-factor authentication, explaining that from now on, no one could log in without the code sent to my physical phone. "Next," she said, hanging up with the bank. She was already typing a rapid email to her paralegal. "We are filing an emergency petition for a temporary injunction against any and all transactions associated with your property. By noon, that fraudulent loan from North Coast Lending will be frozen, and no one will be able to file any new liens or attempt to transfer." She pulled up a browser. "We are also signing you up for a sovereign title alert at the county recorder's office, the moment anyone, Caleb, Sienna, a representative tries to file any paperwork against your deed. You and I will receive an instant notification." She pushed a notepad toward me. "You will go home and call all 3 credit bureaus. You will tell them you are a victim of identity theft and place a full credit freeze on your name. It means you won't be able to apply for credit, but neither will they." I must have looked overwhelmed. She paused, her hands resting on the desk. "Marjorie, The last part is the most difficult. Your existing power of attorney, your healthcare directive. I assume Caleb is named. I nodded, the shame burning hot in my throat. We are revoking them. Today, we will draft new documents. You need to name someone else to make financial and medical decisions for you. Should you be unable? Who do you trust? Absolutely. Gwen, I said, the name a relief. My neighbor, Gwen Harris. Good. Nora wrote it down. She walked me to the door. I felt scoured, exposed, but also lighter. The invisible net I had been tangled in was being cut away, thread by thread. As I was leaving, I turned back. He was so angry. Nora. What if he comes back? Nora looked at me, and her professional demeanor was replaced by a stark, human seriousness. Listen to me, Marjorie. Everything we did today protects your money. It does not protect your person. You have just taken away their access. They will be angry, and they may be desperate. Do not, under any circumstances, engage in a physical confrontation. If Caleb shows up, you do not open the door. If he shouts, you do not answer. If you feel, for 1 second, that you are in danger, you call 911. You do not argue. You leave. Driving home from Nora's office, the world seemed sharper, but darker, as if a filter had been removed. The legal steps were a comfort, but they didn't answer the question that echoed in the silence of my car. How had I missed this? The answer, of course, was that I hadn't. I had simply refused to see it. The memories came back, not as a flood, but as a series of sharp, painful clicks, like a slide projector finally landing in focus. I remembered the emergencies. There was the call 6 months ago, Caleb sounding panicked. Mum, one of Sienna's molars cracked. The dentist won't even look at her without a $5,000 deposit. I'd transferred the money instantly, picturing her in pain. 2 days later, I saw a picture Sienna posted online, tagged at a designer sample sale in Seattle, holding a distinctive leather bag. I had told myself it was a coincidence, that she was treating herself after the dental trauma. Then, the 4 new tires for his car, an urgent safety issue. The request came in the same week as the email I saw about a luxury weekend bag sale at Nordstrom, and Sienna's Career Development Conference, a 3-day event in Portland, $2,000 for the fee, non-negotiable. It's a huge opportunity for me, Marjorie. She had cooed. Caleb and I just can't swing it right now, but it would change everything for us. I paid it. I later saw the charge on the shared streaming account, the dates she was supposedly in Portland. She had binge-watched an entire television series from their home IP address. With every request came the same numbing refrain, the words that acted as a gentle anesthetic for my boundaries. You're such a good mum. You always understand. It's just this once, I promise, just to get us over this hump. I saw Caleb clearly now, perhaps for the first time since he was a child. David and I had struggled for years. There were times when the utilities were late, when I'd portioned out meals. Caleb had grown up with that quiet, background hum of scarcity, a fear of not having enough that had settled deep in his bones. He had a hunger that, I now realized, could never be filled. Sienna hadn't corrupted him. She had simply recognized his specific vulnerability. She was a predator who had found the perfect partner, a man terrified of being poor, and a mother-in-law terrified of being alone. I parked in my own driveway, but I couldn't go inside. I sat in the car, gripped by a profound, suffocating shame. This was my fault, not the forgery, not the lies, but the foundation it was all built on. I had paid for access to my son. I had subsidized his affection. I had traded my money for a relationship, and in doing so, I had taught him that I was not a person, but a resource. I had, in my desperate need to be needed, been feeding the very thing that was now trying to consume me. The shame burned for a full minute, and then it was gone, replaced by a cold, clean anger. I would not be a victim. I would not be the confused old woman in their narrative. I will stop feeding this wrong, I said aloud in the empty car. I went inside, but I didn't go to the kitchen. I went to the guest room and picked up the iPad. His cloud account was still open. My first instinct was to log out, to sever the connection, just as Nora had done with the banks. But then I thought like Gwen. I thought like Nora. Document everything. I sat on the guest bed and began to dig. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was an archivist. I methodically started saving every file, every photo, every message to a new, encrypted hard drive I had bought on my way home. It didn't take long to find the lies. The promotion that had been the excuse for the disastrous dinner, it was a fabrication. I found a folder named Career Projections. Inside were not offer letters, but templates, drafts of announcements, budget spreadsheets detailing how his new salary, a salary that didn't exist, would be allocated. The entire celebration at the Gull's Lantern was a performance, a piece of theatre designed to impress their friends and justify their spending. Then I checked his calendar. My eyes scanned the entries, looking for North Coast lending or other financial meetings. I found something that made my heart stop. Tuesday, the day of the non-existent promotion dinner. He had an appointment scheduled for 4 p.m. just before the restaurant. The entry was simple. Confirm details with Agent Morris. Agent Morris. I knew that name. He was our home insurance agent, the one David and I had used for 20 years. Caleb had a meeting with my insurance agent on the same day he and Sienna were celebrating a fake promotion, using my money, and talking about how much easier it would be if the insurance just paid out. I looked at the lavender bushes outside my window, their grey-green leaves blurred by a sudden, cold mist. They weren't just planning on a forged loan. They were discussing options. They were looking at my house, my life, and running the numbers. I called Nora the next day to report my findings about the insurance agent. Good, she said, her voice sharp. That's motive. But we need to establish a clear pattern of intent and financial desperation. They're cut off from you. So right now, they're angry. We're going to use that. She then laid out the plan. It was devious. It was brilliant. It was pure Nora. You're going to get a new debit card, Nora instructed. Put exactly $2,500 on it, and not a penny more. Then, you're going to text Caleb? What do I say? You apologize. I did as I was told. That afternoon, I sent Caleb a text. Honey, I'm so sorry. I overreacted. I was just lonely and upset. I've been thinking about what you said. I got a new card, and I've put you back on it. We can talk about the house soon. I attached a photo of the new, crisp-looking debit card. The bait was in the water. I didn't have to wait 5 minutes. My banking app, which Nora had taught me to monitor, lit up, declined. Merchant Ashford Jewelers, amount $14,900. A watch. Sienna had tried to buy a $14,900 watch. Less than 5 minutes after I'd opened the account. A pause. 30 minutes. Declined. Merchant, the Alani Spa and Resort. Amount $5,200. Declined. Merchant Oceanic Travel Group. Amount $7,000. Declined. Merchant Liqueur. Bistro. Amount $300. They were frantic, trying smaller and smaller amounts, hitting the card again and again like starved rats at an empty feeder. Every attempt was logged. Every decline was a new entry in Nora's file. The final phase of the test was that evening. After a full day of declined transactions, they were primed, desperate, and confused. I invited them to the house, the scene of our last confrontation. "I want to make this right," I said on the phone, my voice pitched to sound contrite and a little shaky. "Please, just come for dessert. We need to talk about the future, about the house." They arrived at 8 p.m. Sienna was all smiles, her hand looped through Caleb's arm, as if she were a benevolent queen forgiving a difficult subject. Caleb just looked sullen, his eyes darting around the room, landing on objects, valuing them. I had set up my laptop on the dining room table, ostensibly to look at paperwork. The video call to Nora was already active, the camera minimized, the microphone live. She was watching. She was listening. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," I started, folding my hands on the table. "You were right. Caleb, I'm just sitting on this value. It's silly at my age. I want to gift you the house. We can do a quitclaim deed. Sign it over now. Avoid all the taxes and probate later." Sienna's eyes lit up. The predatory gleam was so bright. I was surprised Caleb didn't see it. She leaned forward, her mask of concern completely gone. "Marjorie, that's so smart," she said, her voice dropping into a conspiratorial whisper. "It's the most practical thing to do. So what's the process? Do we just sign? We should get a lawyer. Ours. I mean, he's very efficient." "I just have one condition," I said, looking from her to my son. I pushed a single piece of paper I had typed myself across the table. Sienna snatched it. "What's this?" "It's a simple care agreement. It just says that in exchange for the house, you both agree to manage my care in this house, that I'll never be put in a nursing home or an assisted living facility, that I'll be able to stay here, with my lavender, until the end." Sienna's smile froze. She read the paper, her eyes scanning it rapidly. "Well, this is a little morbid, isn't it? And you know, Marjorie, those facilities, some of them are amazing, like resorts. We'd only want the best for you." She pushed the paper back, a patronizing laugh in her voice. "We don't need to sign something like this. We're family. I want it signed. Sienna. Before the house," I said, my voice firm. She looked at Caleb, a flash of pure venom in her eyes. Caleb, who had been silent, suddenly snapped. "Just sign the damn thing, Sienna," he said, his voice raw with impatience. "Who cares? It's just a piece of paper." He looked at me, his eyes dead. "Just get the house paperwork. Mom, let's get this over with." On the laptop screen, in the tiny, minimized window only I could see, a new message from Nora popped up in the chat. "We have it. All of it." The failed meeting hung in the air like an electrical charge. They had left in a storm of barely concealed fury. Sienna not even bothering to fake a smile. Caleb looking pale and sick. The house felt violated. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text message from Sienna. It contained no greeting. That was a stupid, selfish game tonight. Marjorie, you think you're so clever? Don't change your mind about what you owe us. You have no idea what will happen if you do. It wasn't a vague threat. It was a promise. I did as Nora advised. I double-checked the deadbolts. I put the door chain on. I sat in the dark living room, my heart hammering, realizing I had never changed the locks after David died. Caleb still had a key. I must have dozed, because the next thing I knew, it was well past midnight, and headlights were slicing across my curtains. It was Caleb's car. He was alone. The pounding on the front door was hard enough to shake the frame. Mom? Mom? Open this door right now. I know you're in there. I didn't move. I barely breathed. Mom? He roared again. Then, silence. I heard the scrape of a key in the lock. He had forgotten the chain. He slammed his body against the door. And the chain groaned, holding for a second before the wood splintered and the screws ripped free. The door flew open. He stood in the entryway, a silhouette against the porch light. He was not the enraged, shouting man from the doorstep. He was eerily calm. You have to sign the transfer authorization. Mum, he said, his voice flat. Sienna's right. This has gone on long enough. We're done playing. I stood up from the chair, my knees weak. Caleb, listen to yourself. Look at what you're doing. Look at what she has made you. She didn't make me do anything, he hissed, stepping inside. She just made me see what's mine. I tried one last time. The part of me that was a mother couldn't help it. This is not the way. Honey, this is a crime. Stop. Stop right now. And I will still help you. A repayment plan for the money you took. Therapy. We can get therapy. He laughed. It was a sound I had never heard before. Empty and sharp. Therapy. We don't need therapy. We just need your signature. He lunged for the desk, where my black notebook lay. Is this it? Your little file? I moved, instinctively, to grab it before he could. No, Caleb, stop. He shoved me. It was not an accident. It was a calculated, forceful push with both hands. I stumbled back, my heel catching on the rug. He grabbed my forearm, his fingers digging into the muscle, yanking me back toward him. You will not ruin this. Get off me, I yelled, pulling away. He shoved me again. Harder this time. I lost my footing completely, my arms windmilling. I fell sideways, crashing into the small table by the wall. The lamp went flying, shattering on the hardwood floor. I landed hard, the impact jarring up my spine, my hip exploding in pain. From outside, I heard a sound. A porch light flicked on next door. Gwen. She must have been sitting by her window. Caleb heard it too. He froze, his head snapping toward the sound, the rage in his eyes instantly replaced by a clear, cold panic. That was all I needed. He was distracted. I scrambled on my hands and knees, ignoring the sting of glass, and pulled myself up. I ran the 4 steps to the hallway bathroom, slammed the door, and fumbled with the lock. Mom! Mom! Wait! He yelled, all the false calm gone, the desperation returning. He jiggled the handle. I'm sorry, I didn't mean. Just open the door. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely hold the phone. I dialed 911. My son. He broke into my house. He attacked me. Send someone. As I was whispering my address, I heard the front door slam, the sound of his engine roaring to life, tires squealing as he peeled out of the driveway. He was gone before the dispatcher had even finished my sentence. The patrol car arrived in minutes, but he was gone. I sat on the edge of the tub, shaking, while they took the report. Gwen appeared at my elbow as they were leaving. Her face was a grim mask. "You're not staying here tonight," she said. "They said they'd patrol. He's either coming back, or Sienna is, and she'll be smarter about it. You need to be gone. Let's go to the urgent care. Get that arm looked at." I stood up, and a wave of dizziness hit me. "No," I said, a sudden, sharp clarity cutting through the terror. "That's the first place they'll look. If I file an injury report, they'll know." Gwen understood immediately. She just nodded. "The garage. Can you make it?" She helped me limp through the kitchen, avoiding the mess. I grabbed my purse, the black notebook, and the hard drive. I got into my sedan, the car I'd slept in once before, and backed out. I drove to the brightest, most anonymous place I could think of, the 24/7 supermarket on the highway. I parked in the far back of the lot, under a buzzing fluorescent light, among the overnight trucks. The adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by a deep, throbbing ache in my hip and my arm. I turned on the car's dome light. A dark, ugly bruise, already the shape of his hand, was blooming on my skin. I took my phone. I angled it, wincing, and photographed the bruises. I photographed the splintered wood of my door chain. Then, I opened my voice recorder. I noted the date, the time, the exact words Sienna had texted me. "You have no idea what will happen." I described the shove, the grab, the fall. I clicked off the recorder and sat in the humming silence of the parking lot. I clutched the notebook to my chest. I had tried to offer him a way back. I had tried to salvage the son I remembered. But that son was gone. There was no more negotiation. There was no compromise. He had put his hands on me. The decision was no longer mine to make. The first grey light of dawn found me stiff, cold, and aching in the driver's seat. The supermarket lot was stirring, delivery trucks rumbling past. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My hair was matted. My eyes were hollow pits, and the skin on my arm was a sickening shade of purple. This was not a negotiation. This was a war. I didn't drive home. I drove to Nora Whitcomb's office, parking on the street just as the sun began to touch the tops of the buildings. I waited. At 7:30 a.m., Nora's car pulled into her reserved spot. She got out, carrying her briefcase, and stopped dead when she saw me sitting in my sedan. Her expression, usually so composed, hardened into something I can only describe as fury. She didn't say a word, just unlocked the front door of her office and held it open. Inside, I sat in the same chair as before. This time, I didn't just present documents. I showed her my arm. I showed her the photographs I had taken in the night. I played the recording of my voice, shaky and small, documenting his words. I forwarded her Sienna's threatening text message. "He broke the door chain." "Nora," I said, my voice flat. He shoved me, and I fell. I called 911. Nora was silent for a full minute, her gaze fixed on the photo of my splintered doorframe. "All right," she said, her voice a low, controlled clip. "The defensive posture is over. We are now on offense. What he did last night? Marjorie. That is physical assault. That is breaking and entering. Combined with the financial crimes, this is no longer a civil matter." She was already on her computer, her fingers flying across the keyboard. I am filing an emergency petition with the court, effective immediately. We are petitioning for a civil protection order, but we are also filing a formal complaint of elder abuse, citing physical assault and financial exploitation, with the county prosecutor. I am attaching your photographs, the 911 call log, and Sienna's text message as exhibits A, B, and C. She picked up her desk phone. Get me the prosecutor's on-call domestic violence advocate, now. While she waited, she looked at me. I am also adding a request to the judge to issue an order for Caleb to surrender his passport. He has demonstrated extreme violence and a high likelihood of escalating. He is a flight risk. She barked instructions into the phone, her language all legal, sharp, and brutal. She hung up and immediately started a new call. Yes, I need to dictate a formal legal notice, to be sent, certified mail and email, to Agent Morris and to the General Counsel of Pacific Northwest Mutual Insurance, re-policy holder Marjorie Hale. Be advised that any and all attempts to modify, update, or claim against policy number are to be considered fraudulent. The policyholder's signature has been forged on related financial documents, and a criminal investigation is now active. She continued, putting a legal wall of fire around my assets, warning them that they could be held liable if they assisted in the fraud. After she hung up, she made one more call. Hi, this is Nora Whitcomb. I'm with a client, a domestic violence victim, and I need a community liaison officer to coordinate a civil standby. Yes, a police escort. She needs to retrieve medication and personal belongings from her residence, which is now a crime scene. Can you have an officer meet us at... She gave my address. In 1 hour. She hung up and looked at me. Your title alert is active. The house is secure on paper. Now we make you secure. You can't go back there to live. Marjorie. Not yet. An hour later, I was standing in front of my own home. A uniformed police officer stood beside me, his hand resting near his sidearm. The house was cold and still. The shattered glass from the lamp was still on the floor. My home felt alien, contaminated. The officer, a young man with kind eyes, said, Ma'am, just get what you need. Medicine, clothes, important papers? We'll wait right here. I moved like a robot. I went to the bathroom, sweeping my medication into a bag. I grabbed a toothbrush. I packed a small suitcase with underwear, socks, and 2 pairs of pants. I took my checkbook and the fireproof box. I was in and out in less than 10 minutes. As I locked the door, the officer gave me a pamphlet. This is for victim services, ma'am. They can help with counseling, finding a safe place. Thank you, officer. I have a place to go. Gwen had made a call while I was with Nora. I drove away from my house, the police car following me for the first few blocks, and headed toward the old part of town, St. Helena's Church. A beautiful old stone building ran an unpublicized emergency shelter for women. It was quiet, discreet, and, most importantly, secure. I was a 58-year-old widow, a librarian, a gardener, and as I walked up the steps to ask for a bed, I was now, officially, a refugee. The small, clean room at St. Helena's was quiet, smelling of beeswax and old linen. It was a strange, suspended reality. But for the first time in days, I was not in immediate danger. The legal machinery I had set in motion, however, was now moving with a life of its own. The first crack in their defense came at noon. An email from Nora, forwarding a message from the insurance company. Nora's legal warning had apparently shaken something loose. The email, from Agent Morris himself, was a frantic attempt to get ahead of the narrative. He discovered, he wrote, an urgent application submitted by Caleb. It had been filed the night before the attack. It was a request to triple the coverage on my home, with a specific, handwritten note on the digital form citing high risk of electrical fire due to aging wiring. My blood went cold. Sienna's casual comment, if the insurance just paid out now, felt like a death sentence. They weren't just planning to steal the house. They were planning to erase it, and they were using my son's longtime insurance agent to set the stage. An hour later, a second email. This one was from North Coast Lending. Their legal department stated, in the driest, most terrified corporate language possible, that in light of the formal complaint regarding signature authenticity, the $50,000 loan application was suspended, and they were cooperating fully with all legal inquiries. The noose loosened. Then, Gwen called. Her voice was thin with rage. Marjorie. I knew that insurance agent's name bothered me. Morris. He transferred here 5 years ago. I remembered. I called a friend at the old courthouse. He was investigated in Silverdale for over-insuring properties. Properties that just happened to have a string of bad luck. Fires. Mostly. Nothing ever stuck. But he was run out of town. Nora is already pulling the old files. While Nora's paralegal dug into Morris, my phone began to vibrate. A frantic, desperate buzzing on the nightstand. A string of texts from Caleb. Mum, please answer. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. I just lost it. Sienna's gone. I woke up and she just left. She said you'd ruin us. You're ruining my life. You can't do this. You're my mother. They'll fire me. I'll have nothing. Please. I'm begging you. The tone shifted from apology to blame, then back to a desperate, pathetic plea. And then, the final text. The real Caleb. This is all your fault. You could have just signed. Tell them to stop. Just sign the transfer, and I'll make this all stop. I screenshotted every message and sent them to Nora. Her reply was swift. She forwarded me an email she had just sent to Caleb, CCing a lawyer she had already identified as his legal counsel. It was a final, stark ultimatum. Option A. He would immediately check into an inpatient therapeutic facility, agree to a binding repayment plan for every dollar stolen, and sign a permanent no-contact order. Option B. She would proceed with the criminal charges for elder assault, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, and forgery. The response from Caleb was a terrified silence. But Sienna, it turned out, was the real twist. The police, acting on the assault report and Sienna's threatening text, had gone to Caleb's apartment. They found Caleb weeping, but Sienna was gone. She had vanished in the night. She had left her partner to face the music, but she had, in her haste, made a fatal mistake. She'd left her laptop and a portable hard drive on the kitchen counter. By late afternoon, Nora's digital forensics team had the drive. It was her board project. It was a meticulous, 5-year financial plan titled Post-Inheritance Allocation. It contained spreadsheets detailing the liquidation of my assets, including the Hale Est property sale and, chillingly, insurance payout life prop. The final piece landed just as the sun was setting. Nora's office received an anonymous text message. I heard Caleb Hale is finally in trouble. He scammed me and 3 others on a fake co-working investment. If you're the one building the case, check his apartment garage. Unit B. It was from a former colleague, another one of their victims. The mask hadn't just fallen, it had shattered. The anonymous tip was the key. The police obtained the warrant for the garage unit. It was worse than we imagined. They found the gas can, but they also found a box of cotton wicks, a detailed hand-drawn map of my home's electrical panel, and a printout of my weekly schedule, my library hours, my gardening club Tuesdays, the times I was guaranteed to be out of the house. This wasn't a panicked escalation. This was a plan. With the evidence from the garage added to the forgery, the assault, and Sienna's post-inheritance hard drive, the district attorney's office approved the case immediately. It was no longer just a restraining order. It was a criminal investigation for elder abuse and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. I was still in my car, parked in that same supermarket lot, when my phone rang. The sky was just beginning to lighten from black to a bruised purple. I didn't recognize the number. Mrs. Hale, this is Officer Davies. Are you in a safe location? I am, I whispered. Good. I wanted you to know. We are at your son's apartment complex right now. We are executing the warrant. I didn't need to be there to see it. I could picture the scene perfectly. The new, expensive condos reflecting the watery dawn light off the inlet. The silent, flashing red and blue lights painting the glass. Sienna was gone, a fugitive. A warrant active for her arrest. And Caleb? My son. The boy I taught to ride a bike. I saw him, in my mind's eye, standing in the doorway in the cold morning air, his face pale and slack with the dawning, idiotic realization that the consequences were real. I saw the handcuffs click around his wrists. The officer said more, but I wasn't listening. I hung up. I sat there as the sun came up, feeling nothing at all. Just a vast, cold emptiness. I started the car. I didn't drive toward his apartment. I didn't drive home. I drove to the Harbour Light Community Centre. The doors were still locked, but I sat on the cold concrete steps until the director, Mary, arrived at 7 a.m. She saw my face, the bruise on my arm, and her eyes softened with questions I didn't want to answer. I just pointed to the bulletin board in the foyer. There was a small flyer, printed on lilac paper, Finding Your Way Back, a trauma support group for women over 50. I picked up the pen hanging by a string and signed my name, Marjorie Hale. I was in a small coffee shop, trying to force down a piece of toast, when Nora called. Her voice was crisp, clear, and final. It's done. Marjorie. The protective order is in effect, permanent. Caleb is prohibited from coming within 500 yards of you or the house. He is, for all intents and purposes, legally erased from your life. The civil proceedings to reclaim the stolen funds have been initiated. Your home is secure. Your credit is locked. You are safe. I hung up the phone. I dialed Gwen. My hand was steady, but my voice broke on the first word. Gwen, I whispered. And then, the emptiness that had encased me finally cracked, and a flood of hot, ragged tears spilled over. I need a cup of tea. I wept. And I need a real, honest-to-God sleep. It was the sob of exhaustion, of release. I wasn't crying for him. I was crying for me. I looked down at my shoes. I remembered, with a clarity that felt like a punch, sitting on my front steps 25 years ago. The sun was warm, and I was guiding Caleb's small, clumsy hands, showing him how to loop the lace, how to make the knot. The same hands he had used to push me to the floor. My own lace was untied. I bent down, my hip aching, and slowly, deliberately, I tied my own shoe. I pulled the knot tight. I stood up. The next week, I walked back into the Harbour Light Community Centre. I walked past the room for the trauma group. I walked to the main bulletin board, and I tacked up a new, white sheet of paper. The heading was in bold, Thursday evenings, Financial Literacy for Women 50 and Over. Your Money, Your Rules, hosted by Marjorie Hale. I was starting over, but this time, I was the one setting the terms. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm curious. Where in the world are you listening from? Let me know in the comments so we can connect and share our thoughts. Please subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and if you can, support us by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.